And now we're moving on to the third guest of this block, and that's Tua Björklund. Tua is an assistant professor at the design factory in the Aalto University in Finland. I asked her, what does taking a stance mean? And I got the response that it's putting in the effort to look and advance what you value. We're going to learn in this presentation about effective ways and routes to champion and smuggle sustainable solutions through design into organizations. I'm really interested in how to actually do that. So, Tua, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Let me just share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so it varies to which degree design and sustainability are integrated officially in organization, whether sustainability is a part of your official job description or not. But regardless of that integration, we find that designers are actually in a great position interacting with multiple groups internally as well as externally of organizations to advance design sustainability further. So as said, my name is Tua Björklund. I'm a professor at Aalto University, and we've been looking at for the past decade of how we can advance design sustainability in practice in organizations. So looking at those tactics and strategies that designers can use. So we've been interviewing hundreds of designers all over the world, and most recently this spring looked at 101 organizations here in Finland. And my goal today is to really offer a recap of where design is now in terms of sustainability, how it got there, and most importantly, how can we work together to take it a step further from where we are right now. So when we think about design or sustainable design, most people think about environmental responsibility. That's what comes first to your mind. And that's also what we found in our work to be the furthest along in terms of integration to design efforts in organizations. Those 5 areas that you can see on the slides: biodegradable materials, manufacturing, energy, communications, and reduce, repair, recycle, are the 5 most prominent themes that we've found designers advancing in organizations. And interestingly, we found that regardless of where designers are stationed in organizations, most are already working at least to some degree with at least one of these 5 issues. So that environmental responsibility is really the pack leader in sustainability. And that's what it is also in our public discourse. When we think about environmental responsibility, there's already a existing vocabulary to discussing environmental impact. We're all familiar with carbon footprints. Most of us are familiar with life cycle assessments with virgin materials, and there it might be easiest for designers to hop on board and figure out what that means in their own job. And we find that typically when advancing environmental responsibility, designers really leverage their connection to creating new services and new processes and products in organizations. So whether it's thinking about how could we reduce data consumption in digital services, or how could we advance new materials in organizations, this is an area where designers are already taking an active stance, whether or not sustainability is prominently in the organizational strategy already. But of course, environmental sustainability is just one of the pillars of the sustainability. There's also social and economical sustainability, and those might not be as prominent in the discussion overall. And in design practice, we can see that designers have different connections to these topics as well. So if we think about social progress, it's quite a natural pair with the need-based holistic orientation of designers and the tendency to look for collaborative ways of working. So it's a natural pair to bring in social progress and design together, but this is rarely done in an explicit manner in most organizations today. So of course we have leading organizations who focus on this very explicitly and are doing wonderful progress in the area. But in most organizations, designers are still operating a bit more under the covers when it comes to social progress. Part of it is just recognizing what actually is social progress and how we can advance that. And when we see designers working in the trenches, we can see that often their efforts to advance these are tied to users, customers, and stakeholders, so external people from the organizations. But although the numbers, exact numbers vary from organization and industry to another, we see that overall, it's still rare for organizations to leverage design in thinking about social progress internally. And that to us signals that here might be one low threshold opportunity to increase the social impact of design. So thinking about how can we improve diversity, equity, inclusion internally in our organizations, as we find that in most external applications, it still tends to be passion projects or one-off initiatives, really then rather than integrated to all service design or all product design that is happening in the organizations. And what we can see also is that the ways of working within design have potential to touch upon all of these areas in organizations, both externally and internally. So, for example, social cohesion is something that designers rarely can articulate examples of advancing in their job, but when we think about the processes of design, those are well tuned to understanding and balancing needs across multiple stakeholders, creating shared understanding and so forth. So we urge designers to think about what could be low threshold opportunities in your organizations to really take the social aspect further. And finally, as a stock of where we are currently in terms of sustainable design, economic development seems to be the laggard currently. So, for example, in one study, 1/3 of designers struggle to even articulate what sustainable economic development would be in their industry, let alone their specific organization or specific role in the organization. So there's less of an existing vocabulary that we can leverage in our design efforts. What we can see as examples of sustainable economic development already occurring in different types of organizations. Again, most efforts focus on thinking about sustainable value for customers. Pricing as a standalone issue was one of the most prominent issues that we found in our work. So thinking about the economic accessibility of our services and products and the type of implications that that has for their reach. But we can also see designers working with the viability of internal business models, as well as an upcoming perhaps trend in terms of thinking about not just the pricing from a economic sustainability point of view, but also the resilience of both organizations and particular ecosystems. With the pandemic, a lot of organizations have been struggling with supply chains and ecosystem considerations, and designers have been stepping up to help answer these concerns and really develop our thinking about how could we further resiliency in our operations. But if in those 3 pillars, that's a very broad overlook of where we are now, the question of course is, how did design get there? And what's design doing in order to take an even larger role in promoting sustainability in organizations? And that's what I really want to focus on today, is looking at those roots of, okay, this is where we are, but what are the pathways we can take to take us further? So there are 3 different pathway types that we can think about when advancing sustainability in organization. First group of tactics belong to what we champion as sustainability in organizations. So sustainability is something that is often already in the official strategies of organizations, but sometimes it can be just a bunch of words without that much insight into what it actually means in the day-to-day decision making of different employees, and let alone what those impacts would then be for our customers. So in order to build further what we are doing in the name of sustainability, one typical route that designers can take here is help to concretize that potential. So that can be in the forms of concepts, prototypes, a new offering, really rallying people together around the cause, moving from something that's abstract and maybe a bit difficult to grasp to what it could mean in practice. We heard a wonderful keynote earlier about planting seeds and opening up possibilities rather than directly maybe problem solving. So I think this links very nicely to this first group of strategies. So we can see that design is advancing new types of, for example, bio-based materials through pilot product ranges showing that, hey, this can actually be done in our industry, or offering lighthouse initiatives that really pull in employees across the organization to contribute to sustainability issues. On the other hand, it's not just the solutions or solution concepts that design can offer, but another typical tactic would be through helping to create a shared understanding of what we're actually dealing with through, for example, visualizations and maps. So before we get to the solution part, understanding our current situation, as many sustainability issues are very complex, involve a number of different types of ecosystems, different types of actors. So if we want, for example, circular economy solutions, we need to understand where materials are created, where are they wasted, where's value created. So design often increases sustainability in organizations through offering a better understanding of where the current synergies or bottlenecks for sustainable development actually are, and then can offer an arena for people to come together and deal with these issues. So really shining the spotlight through value mapping or stakeholder mapping or other techniques to create a better understanding in the organization. What are those sustainability initiatives that we might want to take forward? But of course, knowing what to do is just part of the equation. Other tactics focus on how we might be advancing sustainability in the organization. So not only what should our goal be, but how do we actually get there as an organization, not just our designers, but the employees and workforce at large. And there we can see that design plays an active role in many organizations in spreading new tools and approaches. Typically, these focus around collecting insights or prototyping. So either understanding better current needs in the organization, so bringing new ways of, for example, co-creating together with customers, or then prototyping and quickly testing our assumptions. And those tools, not only used by design, become a part of the shared ways of working of organizations and provide a starting ground for taking sustainability further together in the organization. On a second tactic group, what design really uniquely brings to the table on top of the clarification and tools is this experiential layer. So other groups and organizations are also bringing in new ways of working and new goals and ways of understanding, but design really excels in creating that firsthand experience in organizations. So why should we care about this? And also offering that experiential proof of concept that new tools are effective and they do yield value. So for example, designers might be increasing the amount of contact that other people in the organization have with users by bringing them along to user research or helping them see firsthand the type of equity and quality of life of issues that are occurring currently. And when we think about these how tactics, so thinking about how sustainability is advanced, we can see a chicken and egg issue that often design ways of working are easier to bring into organizations that are already customer-centered, that are already have a culture of experimentation, are comfortable with ambiguity, have a culture of collaboration. And when you don't have these, it's of course more difficult to bring the tools in. The good news is, though, that the relationship works in both ways. So if your organization isn't customer-centered already, bringing in new ways and tools and approaches to need finding will help to increase customer centricity through putting more people in contact with customer and other stakeholder needs. So you can cultivate those desired cultural properties in the organization through these tools. And counterintuitively, what we've seen in our research, that this is the one place where you really don't want to seek middle ground, but rather want to go with either those areas and ways of working that are already well off in the organization. So you have a good baseline of activities that you can build on and build some quick wins on. Or then you want to go with the really most difficult areas where the organization is lagging behind, where everyone agrees that this is currently an issue, whether it is having a siloed organization or having no understanding of the social impact of our organization. So when you go to the area that's worst off, you can spend more energy to actually work on the tools because you have less of a need to sell the case that we would need this in the first place. Whereas if you go to a middle ground issue where some in the organization see that this might be an issue, others don't see it as an issue methodologically, then you spend a lot more effort in just trying to convince people to try it out in the organization. So in these how pathways, you want to either leverage what's already really good in your organization, or then really go to the bigger shared issues where we can see that it really is a problem in the organization. However, in a lot of organizations, design doesn't yet have the official mandate to deal with sustainability. There might not even be a sustainability agenda in the organization to push in the first place. So in these cases, designers are not only acting as official champions, bringing in new ways of working or new goals for sustainability, but can already start to make progress working undercover in the organizations. So the last group of tactics that design has been using to advance sustainability in organization focuses around smuggling change. So even if you don't have the official mandate, designers can be well positioned to start creating a mandate for sustainability and a demand for sustainability. And how this happens in practice is, first, designers can leverage facilitation to gain a foot in the door. So in many organizations, designers might not be in decision-making spots where they want to be, but they might rather be invited to the room as a facilitator. So acting in that facilitation role, designers can already start to bring in more diversity into decision-making. They can help to subtly draw attention to key questions and agenda that should be discussed, even if they're not able to yet voice solutions or be heard on what should be done about them. They can start to shape the discussions and build the case for understanding the importance of sustainability in these issues. On the other hand, since designers are also typically connected to the external constituents of organizations, whether those are end users or customers or various other stakeholders, what we've seen in a lot of organizations are designers going kind of undercover to build external pressure and demand in the organization by going through clients and customers. So the expectations and desires of clients and customers might be better suited vehicles in the early phases to get those issues in the agenda. And being in close contact with these groups, designers can help to or leverage these stakeholder groups to help bring the message in the organization that these steps would be desired, and help to make other organizational stakeholders understand that there is indeed a client or business case for sustainability out there. In very conservative industries, what we've even seen is designers leveraging design connections within their competing organizations or other organizations in the field, helping to decrease the perceived risk in going towards more sustainable offerings. So shedding light on what other organizations in the field are already doing and shifting our perceptions of what's normal and desired in that industry. What we've seen in these smuggling tactics is that design often is able to piggyback with other initiatives such as digitalization initiatives or agile initiatives or customer experience developments. So even where sustainability hasn't originally been on that agenda, or even design might have not been on that agenda, designers have been able to bring in sustainability dimensions and questions into digitalization or customer experience efforts and initiatives and shifts in the organization. So when there are already other changes in the organizations, thinking about how can we piggyback or leverage those initiatives to bring in the sustainable design agenda. Because of course, in the end, how effective design can be in sustainability questions is tied to its overall effectiveness in the organization. If you're boxed into a corner in the organization, it will be a lot more difficult to bring a holistic, meaningful impact in sustainability either. So here, what we want to understand is how designers can help to start building that role so that they have the type of access that's needed to form a holistic understanding, have the tools that they can bring the right people into the discussions and help move the sustainability needle further in the field. And here we've seen 3 typical pitfalls. We've seen that in organizations, the type of impact that design is able to have really relies on 3 different facets. It relies on the deep expertise that is offered by service designers and other design professionals, the widespread understanding of design in the organization, and then the scaffolds for design. And in a typical case, you might bring in the deep design experts and even provide them with some design scaffolds, but without widespread understanding about design capabilities, what you're doing in effect is boxing in designers due to ineffective cross-functional collaboration. And in this case, even if you invest more in deep design capabilities, the return on investment will be limited as other parts of the organization is holding progress down. So what you want to do is assess where your lagging capability might be and really address that in order to have a visible impact on the sustainable design practices in the organization. While boxed-in designers have been the most common pitfall we've seen, there are two other common pitfalls. One is detached information, where organizations might really go on board with typically design thinking and have a design thinking training, 1 day or 2 day training for their entire staff, but then fall short on bringing the professional help to take those good intentions into actionable insights and products and services in the organization. Or as a final pitfall, even if you have that widespread understanding and deep experts, if you sprinkle designers far and wide in between in the organization and provide no unifying or harmonizing design scaffolds, what you can have as a result are great initiatives that don't really bring together more than the sum of their parts. So in a lot of organizations, design realities still are on the non-design or design as a finishing touch or design maybe as an integrated part of product development or new service development, but not really yet in the internal processes and at strategic levels. And there we've seen a few effective pathways in starting to shift from new service development and product development to a more strategic impact within the organization and its offering. And here, these really focus on leveraging the insights that design can bring. So informing strategy before you have the seat at the table to actually make the calls, design can already start contributing to those insights that serve as a basis for decision making. On the other hand, design can directly identify new value and potential opportunities for the positioning of organizations and really generate enthusiasm for these new strategic openings. So helping to build momentum towards strategic impact. And finally, the strategies that we can see here, 4 and 5, really taking that facilitation role and supporting a shared understanding, leading up to getting a seat at the table as a assigned representative. And what we want to point out here is that, of course, a goal state for many designers is to have a holistic and a strategic design utilization across the organization. But before you get there, you already have a number of things that you can do in the organization. So thinking about what would be those low threshold steps that can be taken in design in your organization today, and then dreaming about the bigger picture of how design could be promoting holistic sustainability transitions in our organizations. But I really love personally the saying that if something is worth doing, it's also worth doing poorly. So we want to avoid the situations where good intentions prevent any action. So even if you can't solve the whole sustainability issue in your organization, thinking about what would be those little steps that you can take immediately in order to start championing and start smuggling sustainable design into your organization, no matter where its current situation is at the moment. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. There's a QR code and website link on the site if you want to learn more about our research, but I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and joining the Q&A.
Thank you.